The unfortunate part today is that the teacher has become a teacher in the actual sense of the word, whereas he or she should only be a facilitator. The children should be learning much by themselves, and the best way to bring about this, the best way to realize is by interactive learning. If the children are interacting, talking, asking questions, then they are alive, then they are thinking, then they are learning. But if you just tell them this is it and repeat what it is like teaching a parrot. It's like, katapalang. I mean, you just teach and they're just learning on a rote learning basis. And that is not learning. This lesson A for altar, I can manage it. I can run this for hours and hours throughout the year, in fact. I will ask the children, do you have an altar? Do you know what is an altar? And some children will be so excited. They'll be so excited they want to talk about the altar they have in the house. I am not teaching, they are talking. They'll be so proud describing the altar, what they do, how they do. And that's wonderful. They're alive. Then the child who has no altar will say, teacher, I don't know what an altar is. You know, by the time the class is finished and they go home, that child who has no altar will tell the tata and ammi or the father and mother that she wants an altar automatically. So I've taken the lesson from the school, from the classroom to the home. Then I ask a number of things, what do you find in the altar? They talk, they describe. I can have a simulation program. I can create an altar in the classroom, make them bring some things and have a puja. They are alive. This is simulation. This is role play. They are active learning. This is experiential learning which the Buddha taught. The Buddha said, experience, find out, investigate. And we can't do this unless we bring about this form of learning, this approach of learning.
Well, I think we do this type of lesson at this the Hampasala or the Saturday school rather at the Sambodhi Vihara, and most kindly doctor has taken over a class, I suppose.
I did once. And I had proven, in fact I asked the children to draw their altar. The next Saturday, children brought so proudly, I said, I want to pin up your altars. They brought up the altars so proudly, and they started showing very proudly the altar in the house. They also said that they helped the parents to pluck the flowers for the puja in the house. Then there is also the other aspects, of why they offer flowers. They learn. As I said, the mechanical side is now what is in vogue. But here the child now knows why I offer flowers. What is the significance? The child learns deep Dhamma from this. I have taught them that if the flower is beautiful and bright but has no fragrance, no insects will come and pollinate it. Nobody wants to come, none of the insects. But even if it's not beautiful, but if it has got fragrance, and it is able to, have that fragrance, insects will still come. Similarly, children, you might be the most beautiful, you might be the most handsome, you might be the richest, the cleverest in the class, but if you don't have virtues, if you're not kind, if you're not well-mannered, good behavior, nobody will want to come close to you. And so they are able to understand this. And of course I give the history of offering of flowers. It's a cultural history. Whenever a respected person, that has been the tradition to express our appreciation and joy and honor of that person seeking refuge, all those things. We can go on and on and on teaching the Dhamma in English, and at the same time they learn the vocabulary, they learn the alphabets, they learn the language. It's much better than learning A for apple, and I go on and on. In fact, I say C is for cat, is the normal way that you learn. But here I'm able to teach C is for caring. C is for caring. How do you care for your mother? How do you care for your grandfather? How do you care for your father? And how you care for your grandmother? And the child is able then to go home and practice and come back to class and say, I did this, I did that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. This is fun.
Yeah.
You know, we should make learning fun, whereas we are making learning such a torturous thing. You know, even at the age of the child, I know children are going to tuition class at the age of 5 and 6. In Singapore,
yes.
they are competing with each other just to, you know, be first in the class, which is a crime because the child is growing at this age. The child needs to experience, to feel, to grow up in the normal, natural process. But we are just turning them out to be something else. And some of them just get burnt out. They fall out of the education system. They just give up. It's too much. Some commit suicide, you know. And the other point I need to point out is that our value systems have to change. We tend to value the straight A's as the all and be all of, you know, a child's life and education. Parents and policy makers make it to be so, and we honor and we, you know, glorify these people. But if you take this number of students like a pyramid, it's only 1 or 0.5 or what small percentage of students are involving the top A's. What about the rest? You mean to say useless? If this is how we are going to, you know, look at them, we are asking for trouble. In fact, a nation is built by the people who are below. The bulk of the people are middle and below, so they have to be more productive. They have to be more, you know, energetic, more alert, more resourceful. We need to motivate them. The achievers will automatically go on their own. Whether the teacher, you know, praises them or not, they'll be doing well. But we need to now make the others feel that they are also benefiting, they are also learning, and they are also important and valuable people of the country, citizens of the country.
Yes, well, sir, I would like to ask you now, you just happened to mention some children, they just fall out of they just get burned out from the education system because it's far too much for them. But the parents, they think, because now even for us, we had to go for tuition because the others are doing it, and like we had the fear we'll fall out if we don't. Sometimes it's not that the school teacher is bad, she does a pretty good job, but since the fact that the others are doing it and the fear of losing the race, I think that's what sort of motivates them and the parents to do this. So what sort of advice can you give the parents, because sometimes they realize that it's too much for their children, not every child can cope up with it. What sort of advice can you give the parents?
2 or 3 things. First of all, they need to understand that, you know, as parents, they must have unconditional love. They must have unconditional love for their child. They shouldn't love their child because, you know, she's smart or he's excelling in class and, you know, excellent student. And they should not degrade the child because not doing so well in school and things like that. That has to be there. And that again we need to acculturalize. It's not been acculturalized. I mean, nobody teaches anybody to be a parent to start with. We'll be discussing this later. But right now, since you brought up the point, we are not trained to do that, and we need to do it, you know, in a way that children, even before people get married, they should know these are the things, you know, not to do these kind of things. And society as a whole should change through policy changes. The policy decision makers must institute policies and value systems which do not reinforce what you are talking about. As it is, they are reinforcing. We need to turn it around, diffuse the situation by saying, well, no, straight A's is not everything. And, you know, if you're a rounded person, reward that rounded student. If that person the student has got extracurricular excellence, reward that. So the policy again must come into play. If you're rewarding somebody because, you know, he or she excels as being a good leader in class, or, you know, having certain qualities, certain other talents and skills, reward that. And the system, of course, also has to change. it should move from exam orientation, because the whole thing is because exam has become you know, the what you call it, the most sacred thing in the education system. So you need to now remove that exam emphasis or exam orientation and paper qualification orientation, that your system of education itself must be oriented towards group tasks, exercises, research, projects, problem solving. When you learn in a parrot form, in a route learning form, you are only thinking in that same groove. You cannot think outside of that groove. In fact, you know, I give a very classic case. The teachers teach mangoes are sour, you know, and the child is forced to learn mangoes are sour. But if a child is so used to tasting sweet mangoes, can you expect the child to say this? No.
Definitely
not.
So
we need to encourage, you know, this kind of lateral thinking, thinking out of the box, creative thinking, originality. Again, as I said, you know, this is very much in Buddhist pedagogy. The Pariyatti Patipatti Pativeda system of education provides you all the opportunity to be creative, to think out of the box. And also the Buddhist concept of, you know, of Kalyana Mitra, of working together, of Samagga, all these things should be inculcated in the social culturalization, social education. Not only in the home, but when they come to school, all this must be ingrained. I mean, part of the education is, you know, the socialization of the child. If the child is not able to ingrain all these things, then obviously the child is not going to grow up to be having these values in the mind and in the behavior. No chance, because you have not encouraged these things. When you have a group exercise, whereas the Western and the so-called modern one, the individual is more important, be individualistic, I first, mine, you know, those things have now to be taken off our system. It is foreign to Buddhist culture. It is foreign to Buddhist culture, and is foreign to the Buddhist education system. But the exercises that the role play, if you have a puja together, if you develop this concept of Kalyana Mitra in the classroom, and children grow up, the parents know the children know the parents, there is no need to compete and, you know, take some special pride that your child is the first. By all means, if the first, well and good, but don't make it a huge song and dance, you know. It should not be the case. The other child might be, you know, good in something else. So the curriculum must change, the books must change, the methodology must change, and the emphasis then, of course, will take a different course. And hopefully, over some years, we will be able to downplay this paper qualification. We can have interviews, we can have, you know, recommendations from the teacher that I can vouch that this particular child is a good organizer, is a good leader, which you can't get from a book.
True.
This child has got fantastic PR, you know. And this is what is required today. In fact, many employees are looking for these things. But you're not producing these things. They're only producing paper qualifications. An employee is looking for these kind of qualities. Then the employer also will be able to employ you. Because right now you're only giving paper qualifications. But if you can produce this kind of human resource, you know, capabilities, the organizations, the institutions will want to employ these kind of. They don't want geniuses, because they can't manage them anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, if the child is excelling in some area, well and good. And in the computer age that we have today, creativity cannot be, you know, just overnight developed. It has to be a culture that has to be ingrained from small. And this is only through process of opportunity and the